Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, you're going to be learning about unary operators in Java. Now, if you watched the video on arithmetic operators, you know that operators like the plus symbol are known as binary operators. This is because they work or act on two operands. Over here, you notice that this plus sign acts on two values, 3 and 5. This is why it's a binary operator. Unary operator basically means that it's only going to act on one number or one value. Now in Java, there are actually three different kinds of unary operators. You can have increment operators, decrement operators, and the not operator. Now if you want to learn about the not operator, I recommend you watch my video on logical operators. In this video, I'm only going to be telling you about increment and decrement operators. Increment and decrement operators are actually pretty simple. All they do is they increase or decrease the value of a variable by 1. So let me just make a variable called a and set this to 5. Now the increment operator is represented by two plus symbols. So when I say a plus plus, this is going to increase the value of a by 1. In other words, a plus plus is just another way of writing a is equal to a plus 1. So now when I print the value of a, you notice that it's going to print 6. A plus plus basically increased the value of a by 1 from 5 to 6. And when I printed it, it just printed the new value of the variable a. One important thing you need to remember is that printing a plus 1 is different from printing a. When I say a plus 1, it's just using the value of a and adding 1 to it and printing this new answer. It's not changing the value of a itself. However, a plus plus is actually changing the value of a. It's modifying it from 5 to 6. This is why when I print a, it's actually going to print 6. Now a decrement operator is just the opposite. A decrement operator is represented using two minus symbols. Basically, this is going to decrease the value of a by 1. So that's just another way of writing a is equal to a minus 1. When I run this program now, you notice that it's going to print the number 4. It decreased the value of a by 1 from 5 to 4 and it printed this new value of a, which is 4. Now something important you need to understand is that you can use the increment or decrement operator before the operand or after the operand. Both cases, using it before or after is going to change the value by 1. Over here, if I take this decrement operator and if I place it before a, you notice that when I run the program, I get the same output as before. It decreases the value of a by 1. The same thing applies for the increment operator. If I put a plus plus before this a, this is just going to increase the value of a by 1. So over here, it's going to increase the value of a to 6 and it should print 6. And if you notice, that's exactly what we get. Based on whether you place the operator before or after the operand, you have two more types of increment or decrement operators. If you place the operator before the operand, you're going to call it a pre-increment or a pre-decrement operator. In this case, since our operator plus plus is before the operand a, we call it a pre-increment operator. Now if I place the plus plus or the operator after a, since it's after a, it's called a post increment operator. The same thing applies for decrement operators. If I just say a minus minus, since the operator minus minus is after a, we call it a post decrement operator. If I place minus minus before a, since this is before a, we call it a pre-decrement operator. But why is the difference between post and pre-increment and decrement operators important? To understand that, let's look at these two statements over here. So you can notice that I have a variable called a, which is set to 3, and I'm also making a variable called x, and I'm setting this equal to a plus 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 a. Now having so many plus symbols is a bit confusing, so let's just add brackets around the increment operator expressions. Now that we added the brackets, you notice that the plus operator in the middle is acting as a binary operator by adding two different terms, and the plus plus operator is acting as a unary operator by increasing the value of a. So now, since we know the value of a, we can try to evaluate what the value of x is going to be. And you might think that since it's a plus plus, Java is going to increase a to 4 and use 4. And in the second term, which is plus plus a, it's going to increase a from 4 to 5 and use 5. So you might think our expression will look something like this, where x will be equal to 4 plus 5. But this is actually wrong. This is not what happens. And this is because of the difference between pre and post increment and decrement operators. If you look at the first term, a plus plus, this is a post increment operator. The increment operator comes after the operand or the variable a. This means that you're going to use the value of the variable first, and then you're going to increase the value of the variable to 4. It's just the order in which you're writing it. Over here, in a pre-increment operator, the increment operator comes first. This means you're telling Java to increase the value of a first to 5 and then use this new value of a as 5. So the actual output of this statement is going to be 8. We can see that in this println statement as well. Over here I have a variable called a which is set to 5 and I'm basically printing a plus plus. So in this case, since the increment operator comes after the operand, it's a post increment operator. The value of the variable is used first and then you're going to increase the variable to 6. So when I run this, you notice that it's actually going to print 5. It's not going to print 6. Again, the variable is used first and then it's going to increase the value of the variable a to 6. This means that now the new value of the variable should be 6. So when I run this program again, but I print a, it should print 6. And you notice that that's exactly what we get. We get 6 because the value of a has been changed. The only difference is that since it's a post increment operator, you're using the variable a first and then you're going to increase it to 6. Now on the other hand, if I just write this as a pre-increment operator plus plus a, since the operator comes first, you're going to increase the value of a to 6 and then when I add a over here, it's going to print that number 6. So when I run this program, it's just going to print 6. Post and pre-decrement operators also work in the exact same way. To understand this, we'll look at a similar expression. So over here, I have a variable called p, which is set to 9, and I have an int variable called y, which is equal to b minus minus plus minus minus b. So we'll add brackets just so that it's clear what's the unary operator and what's the binary operator. So now that we've added the brackets, you can clearly see that minus minus is the decrement operator and plus there is the binary operator adding these two terms. Since we already know the value of b, we'll try to evaluate this expression. So the first term is basically a post decrement operator, meaning you're going to use the value of the variable first and then you're going to decrease it to 8 and then you're going to add minus minus b. This is a pre-decrement operator. Since the decrement operator comes first, you're going to decrease the value of b first. You're going to decrease it to 7 and then you're going to use the new value of b. Over here you're going to use 7. So the value of x is going to be set to 16. Let's see if the value of x is actually 16 or not. So to show this, I created a variable b and I set it to 9 and I'm just setting x to b minus minus plus minus minus b and then I'm just printing the value of x. So when I run this program, you notice that it's actually going to print 16. So we were right. Something important that you need to realize is that when you're using increment or decrement operators, the values of the variables is also changing. So you have to keep a track of the variable. Over here, you notice that that's exactly what I did. By keeping a track of the variable b, we know exactly what values we'll need to use. This is very important. Now we look at a problem which is a bit harder. So I made a variable called x, which I set to 5. I made a variable called y, which I set to 7. And I made a variable called a, which is set to this long expression over here. I already have brackets around the increment or decrement operator terms, and we can clearly differentiate between the addition operator and the increment operators. Right. So now we'll just try to evaluate this expression. Our first term is x plus plus. Since it's a post increment operator, you're going to use the value of the variable first, and then you're going to change the value of the variable x to 6. To this, we are adding minus minus y. This is a pre-decrement operator. Since the decrement operator comes first, you're going to decrease the value of the variable y to 6 first, and then you're going to use this new value 6. And then we're adding y plus plus. This is a post increment operator. You're going to use the value of the variable first, so in this case 6, and then you're going to increase the value of the variable y to 7. After this, we finally have a post decrement operator. This means that since the decrement operator comes after the operand, you're going to use the value of the operand first. Since I've kept track of my variables x and y, I know that the value of x is 6. So I'm going to use the value 6 first, and then I'm going to decrement x to 5. So the final value of x is 5, the final value of y is 7, and the value of a is now 23. And when I run the same code in my code editor and print the value of a, you notice that we do actually get 23. Now we're going to look at another expression which is not necessarily hard but a bit tricky. So first I made a variable called a, of the int data type, which is set to 4. Here I have an expression using two variables x and y, which is basically changing the value of a. X is initially set to 8 and y is initially set to 9. First, let's try to simplify this expression by adding brackets around the increment or decrement operator terms. So now that we added brackets, it's a lot more clearer what are the binary operators and what are the unary operators. But you notice that I'm not using a simple assignment operator over here. I have a multiplication sign over there. This is what's called a compound assignment operator. If you don't know what compound assignment operators are, that's fine. I'm going to tell you what they are in this video. Now, if I have a times equals some expression or some variable b, this is the same as writing a is equal to a times b. And this works for the other arithmetic operators as well. If I have a plus equals to b, it's the same as writing a is equal to a plus b. So now if I have a times equals this whole expression, which we'll consider as b, it's the same as writing a is equal to a times that same whole expression again. And now by rewriting it using this expression, you notice that our expression is a lot more clear. Also note that when you write it this way, you're actually going to get brackets around the second expression because there are two different expressions. A is one term and this whole expression involving x and y on this other side can be considered a different term. Now we can just evaluate for the value of a. If you remember, a was initially 4. So we're going to substitute for the value of a over here. And then I'm multiplying the value of a, which is 4, with this whole expression on the right. Let's first evaluate this expression and then multiply it with 4. So when I have x plus plus, this is a post increment operator. You're going to use the value of x first, which is 8, and then you're going to increase the value of x to 9. And then our second term is a post decrement operator. You're going to use the value of x first, which is 9, and then you're going to decrease it to 8. And after that, we have minus minus y. Since the minus minus is before y, it's a pre-decrement operator. You're going to decrease the value of y first, and then you're going to use this new value of y in your expression. After this, you again have plus plus x. This is a pre-increment operator. You're going to increase the value of x to 9 first, and then you're going to use this new value 9 in your expression. Let's just evaluate this expression. 8 minus 9 minus 8 plus 9 is just 0. So the value of a is just equal to 4 times 0. And this is going to be 0. And when I run the same code in my code editor, you notice that we do actually get the value of a as 0. Just remember that you have to be really careful with compound operators. And that's it. That's all you need to know about unary operators in Java. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching and have a great day.